We might all remember Macaulay Culkin from the popular Home Alone series. Culkin was one of the most famous child actors back in the 1990s. He wasn't only famous amongst his peers, but he was also famous among grown-ups who were mesmerized by just how good he was at only 10 years old. And out of these people was Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was the king of pop who had defined and redefined what it meant to be good at your craft. But sadly, his popularity was short-lived following his death in 2009. And since his death, a lot of people have come out with quite shocking claims about the man. Claims that make you wonder and question the character of Michael Jackson. Now, while all of these claims are circulating, there was one person who could know more about Michael, and that person is none other than Macaulay Culkin. But all of this makes you wonder, what claims were made about Michael Jackson? Join us as we get into all the details. Macaulay Culkin turbulent early life. Macaulay Culkin, born August 26, 1980 in Manhattan, was one of the biggest child stars of the 90s. Best known for playing Kevin McAllister in Home Alone and its sequel,
I'm Kevin McAllister, 671 Lincoln Boulevard.
He became a household name overnight, earning a Golden Globe nomination for his mischievous yet lovable performance. Named after British historian Thomas Babington Macaulay, he was the third of 7 kids in a large, chaotic household, kind of like the one in his on-screen Home Alone character. His father, Kit Culkin, had dreams of stardom, but never made it big, while his mother, Patricia Brentrup, worked as a telephone operator to keep the family afloat. They lived in a cramped Manhattan apartment, struggling financially, until Macaulay's career changed everything. Culkin's childhood wasn't all red carpets and movie sets. His father was reportedly abusive and controlling, and by his teens, Macaulay had enough. After his parents split, he took them to court, removing their control over his multi-million-dollar trust fund. Rumors swirled that he had legally divorced them, but he later clarified that he had simply cut them off financially. He's been estranged from his father ever since. His journey in showbiz started early, at just 4 years old. He performed in a stage production of Bach Babies with the New York Philharmonic, and landed TV and film roles throughout the 1980s. His first film role was in Rocket Gibraltar, 1988, but it was Uncle Buck, 1989, alongside John Candy, that put him on Hollywood's radar. A year later, Home Alone made him a global superstar. From struggling in a tiny apartment to outshining his own father's acting dreams, one can see where the jealousy would stem from. Culkin's role turned him into a global sensation, with his performance earning him a Golden Globe nomination and multiple awards. And even his Home Alone nemesis, Joe Pesci, later called him a really sweet kid and very professional. By 1991, Culkin wasn't just a movie star, he was the child star. He voiced the lead in the animated series Wish Kid, hosted Saturday Night Live, and even landed a spot in Michael Jackson's Black or White music video. That appearance stirred up controversy while simultaneously cementing Culkin's status. That same year, he showed a truly smashing emotional depth in My Girl, 1991, earning an MTV Movie Award for Best Kiss with co-star Anna Chlumsky. Then came Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, 1992, where his paycheck jumped from $110,000 for the first film to a whopping $4.5 million. But Culkin wasn't just about slapstick comedy. He went dark in The Good Son, 1993, playing a chillingly manipulative child. This role earned him an MTV Movie Award nomination for Best Villain. That same year, he also starred in The Nutcracker as the title role, showing off his ballet training. By 1994, Culkin was everywhere, starring in Getting Even with Dad, The Page Master, and Richie Rich. But despite the success, he was getting burnt out. At just 14, he stepped away from acting, opting for a private high school in Manhattan and a break from the spotlight. However, before his retreat from fame, one part of his life kept him in the headlines: his close friendship with Michael Jackson. Their friendship, which began when Culkin was at the peak of his career, sparked endlessly wild speculation and media frenzy. But Culkin, even years later, still maintained that their relationship was purely innocent. But a lot of people disagree with this claim. Allegations against Michael Jackson. In 1993, Michael Jackson's career took a dark turn when he faced accusations of assault from 13-year-old Jordan Chandler. What began as a seemingly close friendship quickly spiraled into one of the most controversial scandals in entertainment history. Jackson first met Jordan through his stepfather, David Schwartz, whose car rental business had serviced Jackson's vehicle. Jordan's mother, June Chandler Schwartz, introduced her son to Jackson, and the two formed a friendship. The pop star frequently invited Jordan, his stepsister, and his mother to spend weekends at Neverland Ranch. Aside from visiting the ranch, the group also traveled to Las Vegas and Florida, with Jordan choosing to spend more time with Jackson, often at the expense of his scheduled visits with his father, Evan Chandler. Now this is where everything started to get messy. Initially, Evan encouraged the relationship, even suggesting Jackson build an extension on his house or buy him a property. However, things took a turn when Jackson stayed at the Chandler-Schwartz home for 5 days, sharing a room with Jordan and his stepbrother. While Evan claimed never to have seen any misconduct, he admitted that the sight of Jackson in bed with Jordan, though both were fully clothed, made him suspicious. And by July 1993, tensions between Evan and Jackson escalated. Unbeknownst to Evan, a phone call he made to David Schwartz was recorded, revealing his hostile intentions. On the tape, Evan described Jackson as evil and boasted about hiring a ruthless lawyer, Barry Rothman, to destroy Jackson's reputation. "If I go through with this, I win big time. Michael's career will be over," he said. Following this conversation, allegations were made that shocked the whole world. Many speculated about the true motives behind the claims, especially given Evan Chandler's apparent desire for financial gain. Ultimately, the case was settled out of court for a reported $23 million, without Jackson ever admitting guilt. The accusations opened the floodgates and marked the beginning of a turbulent chapter in Jackson's life. These accusations fueled speculation and controversy that would follow Jackson until his tragic passing in 2009. The allegations against Jackson took a dramatic turn in August 1993, when Evan Chandler claimed to have obtained a confession from his son Jordan under highly questionable circumstances. While Jordan was under the influence of Amitol, Evan asked Jordan whether Jackson had touched him inappropriately. When Jordan said yes, Chandler took this as definitive proof and proceeded to build a legal case against Jackson. Rather than immediately going to law enforcement, Chandler and his legal team first approached Jackson with a $20 million demand, threatening to take the matter to criminal court if the payment wasn't made. Jackson's legal team countered with $1 million, but Chandler refused, lowering his demand to $15 million. When Jackson refused to pay, Chandler continued pushing for a settlement, and some sources suggest he even sought a $20 million film production deal with Jackson to resolve the matter privately, further fueling suspicions that his true motivation was financial gain. By mid-July, Chandler's lawyer, Barry Rothman, reached out to psychiatrist Mathis Abrams, seeking an expert opinion to support the allegations. Abrams, without having met Jordan, Evan, or Jackson, wrote a letter stating there was reasonable suspicion of abuse. However, he also noted that if the case were real, rather than hypothetical, he would be required by law to report it. On August 17th, Evan Chandler took Jordan to Abrams, where Jordan, over a 3-hour session, provided graphic details of alleged abuse. The following day, Jordan repeated his claims to the police, including a description of Jackson's genitalia. However, Jordan struggled to recall specific dates and times, though his overall story remained consistent. As the Los Angeles Police Department's exploited child unit launched its investigation, Jackson's Neverland Ranch was raided under a search warrant on August 21st. Police interviewed 30 children who were close to Jackson, but none of them stated that Jackson had ever molested them. Meanwhile, Jackson's chauffeur, Gary Hearn, testified in a deposition that he had regularly driven Jackson to Jordan's house at night and picked him up the following morning for about a month. On August 24th, as Jackson was in Bangkok for the third leg of his Dangerous World Tour, the allegations were publicly revealed. That same day, Jackson's private investigator, Anthony Pellicano, held a press conference accusing Evan Chandler of an extortion attempt. However, Pellicano did not disclose that Jackson had made counteroffers during the negotiations. Jackson's family also publicly defended him, stating it was their unequivocal belief that he was being targeted for extortion. As the controversy grew, Jackson had to cancel multiple tour dates, releasing an audio tape message to his fans on August 26th, apologizing for the cancellations. This period marked a turning point in Jackson's life, with his career and public image taking a severe hit. While the accusations would later be settled out of court, they would continue to haunt Jackson for the rest of his life, starting a debate over whether he was a predator or the victim of a high-stakes extortion scheme. As the legal battle escalated, high-profile attorney Gloria Allred held a press conference on August 31, 1993, announcing that she had been retained by the Chandlers and strongly implying that a civil lawsuit against Jackson was forthcoming. However, in a surprising turn of events, Allred withdrew from the case on September 10th without providing any explanation. Shortly after, on September 13th, the Chandlers hired Larry R. Feldman, a well-known attorney and former president of the Los Angeles County Bar Association, to represent them. On October 6th, Jordan Chandler underwent a psychiatric interview with Dr. Richard Gardner in New York. Gardner was known for formulating parental alienation syndrome, a controversial theory that suggests children in custody disputes can be manipulated into making false allegations. During this interview, Jordan provided details of his alleged abuse, particularly focusing on his trip to Monaco in May 1993 with Jackson for the World Music Awards. Meanwhile, law enforcement intensified their investigation. On November 8, 1993, police raided the Jackson family home, Havenhurst, in search of evidence. This was after an earlier search of Neverland Ranch had yielded no conclusive proof. A turning point came when David Schwartz handed over the infamous taped conversation with Evan Chandler to authorities. Authorities leaked the tape to the press, and it became an important piece of Jackson's defense. Private investigator Anthony Pellicano, hired by Jackson, later publicly released the recording, though it had been edited before publication. Critics of Jackson's defense claimed the edits could have removed context, while his supporters saw the tape as damning evidence that Evan Chandler's primary motive was financial gain rather than justice for his son. At this stage, the case had turned into a full-blown media spectacle, with the court of public opinion deeply divided over whether Jackson was a predator or a target of a high-stakes shakedown. As the investigation into Michael Jackson unfolded, testimonies from children and former staff members painted a picture of deep contradictions. Brett Barnes, an 11-year-old boy who had spent time with Jackson, spoke publicly about their friendship and addressed the rumors directly. He admitted that he had shared a bed with Jackson but insisted that nothing inappropriate had ever happened. "I was on one side of the bed and he was on the other. It was a big bed," he explained, dismissing the insinuations that had been made. Wade Robson, a 10-year-old dancer and choreographer, echoed a similar sentiment when he appeared on Fox television. He, too, had slept in the same bed as Jackson, but he firmly denied that there had ever been anything improper between them. As the accusations gained traction, some parents began to question the aggressive tactics used by the police during the investigation. Several reported that officers had tried to pressure their children into making allegations against Jackson. In some instances, the police allegedly told children that they had nude photographs of them in an attempt to extract incriminating statements. Parents were also reportedly told that their children had been molested, even when their children themselves had denied it. Hoping to build a case, authorities sought testimony from Jackson's former employees, but many of these witnesses had credibility issues that raised suspicions about their motives. In September 1993, police traveled to the Philippines to interview two of Jackson's former housekeepers. While they made allegations against Jackson, their claims were undermined by their own financial dispute with him, leading many to believe that they were acting out of resentment rather than genuine concern. One of Jackson's former security guards came forward with his own story, claiming that he had been ordered by Jackson to destroy a photograph of a naked boy. But instead of reporting this supposed incident to the police, he chose to sell his story to the tabloid news program Hard Copy for $150,000. Blanca Francia, who had previously worked as Jackson's maid, also made disturbing allegations. She claimed that she had quit her job in disgust after witnessing Jackson in the shower with a child. But as the details of her story were examined, inconsistencies began to emerge. Reports revealed that she had actually been fired from her position in 1991, and like others before her, she had sold her story to hard copy for a payment of $20,000. When journalist Diane Diamond interviewed her, Francia denied that she had been fired, but admitted that she had accepted money in exchange for sharing her allegations. On December 2, 1993, attorney Charles Matthews held a press conference announcing that his clients had been harassed and threatened by Anthony Pellicano, the private investigator hired by Jackson. Matthews represented former security guards who had recently filed a wrongful termination lawsuit, claiming that they had been fired because they had first-hand knowledge of Jackson's nighttime visits with young boys. As these accusations continued to surface, Jackson's supporters saw a pattern emerging, one where disgruntled former employees and opportunists sought to profit from his downfall. The allegations were serious, but the circumstances surrounding them cast doubt on their validity. Many of those who came forward had accepted large sums of money from media outlets, calling their credibility into question. While some believed that Jackson was being unfairly targeted in a calculated smear campaign, others saw the accusations as troubling signs of something far more sinister. With no clear resolution in sight, the controversy surrounding Jackson only deepened, leaving the world divided on the truth. When it seemed as though things were finally starting to calm down, another allegation hit, this time from a loved one. What did Macaulay Culkin say about his relationship with Michael Jackson? Macaulay Culkin was just 10 years old when he got a life-changing phone call from none other than Michael Jackson. The Home Alone star had caught Jackson's attention, and the two first met in person when Culkin performed in the Nutcracker in New York. What followed was a highly scrutinized friendship. Culkin became a frequent guest at Jackson's Neverland Ranch, a massive 2,700-hectare estate filled with amusement park rides, an arcade, a zoo, and everything a kid could ever dream of. According to People, this was the perfect place to lure unsuspecting kids, too. They had sleepovers, hung out like best friends, and played pranks, despite their 22-year age gap. Naturally, their bond raised eyebrows, especially given the abuse allegations Jackson faced in the early 90s. But Culkin has always maintained that their relationship was innocent, describing it as a normal friendship between two people who understood each other's struggles with fame. In a candid interview on Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, Culkin explained, "For me, it's so normal and mundane. I know it's a big deal to everyone else, but to me it was a normal friendship." He acknowledged that people found their connection unusual, but he never felt the need to justify it. At the time, Culkin felt isolated from his peers, his massive fame setting him apart from other kids. Jackson, who had lived a similar experience as a child star, recognized this and wanted to be there for him. "I was a peerless person," Culkin said. "Nobody else in my Catholic school had even this much idea of what I was going through, and he was the kind of person who'd been through the exact same frickin' thing and wanted to make sure I wasn't alone in that." To Culkin, Jackson was more than the king of pop. He was a prankster, a generous and silly friend who treated him with kindness. And unlike the rest of the world, Culkin wasn't starstruck. "I really didn't actually give a about famous people. I was thoroughly unimpressed by them," he admitted. Whether people saw their friendship as unusual or not, for Culkin, it just made sense. But the Michael Jackson incident hasn't been the only thing that Culkin has had to talk about. So what exactly were these allegations that Culkin had to defend Michael from? Friend or foe? On September 2, 1993, LaToya Jackson appeared as a guest on The Today Show, where she publicly defended her brother, Michael Jackson. She expressed unwavering support for him, stating, "I stand by Michael 1,000%. If you think about it, he has been convicted before a trial." However, in the same interview, she also admitted that she could not say for certain whether the allegations against him were true. A few weeks later, during an appearance on The Maury Show, she reiterated her belief that Michael was being unfairly judged by the public without having even been charged with a crime. She said that there was nothing inappropriate about his relationships with children and that she could never believe such allegations against him. But despite this initial defense, LaToya changed her stance dramatically on December 8, 1993. Makes you wonder why. At that time, she was estranged from the Jackson family and had not seen her brother for several years, and in a now infamous statement, she accused MJ of being a pedophile. She claimed that she had personally seen checks made out to various boys' families and argued that the abuse Michael had suffered as a child had turned him into an abuser himself. She and her then-husband Jack Gordon also alleged that Michael had attempted to kidnap and kill her. The next day, on December 9th, she appeared on Today again, this time speaking with Katie Couric. She repeated her suspicions, saying, "I do know he'd have boys all the time, and they'd stay in his room for days. Then they would come out. There'd be another boy, and he'd bring someone else, but never two at a time." LaToya also claimed to have definitive proof of Michael's alleged misconduct and offered to disclose it for $500,000. This led to a bidding war between US and UK tabloids, but the deal ultimately fell apart when she failed to produce any evidence. In response to her statements, the Jackson family publicly disowned her. Years later, LaToya recanted her allegations, explaining that she had been forced to make them by her abusive husband, Jack Gordon. Prior to her accusations, Gordon had been arrested for assaulting her, and their marriage ended in divorce 3 years later. By 2003, Michael had forgiven his sister, and in a 2009 interview with Barbara Walters, she completely retracted her claims. She stated that Michael had never engaged in inappropriate behavior with children, and that he was not a pedophile. On December 22, 1993, Michael Jackson publicly responded to the allegations against him for the first time in a televised statement broadcast via satellite from Neverland Ranch. Denying all accusations, he declared his intent to prove his innocence and criticized the media for manipulating the claims to serve their own narratives. Jackson also described the police investigation, particularly the strip search he was subjected to, as the most humiliating ordeal of my life. A few weeks later, on January 5, 1994, shortly before the settlement was finalized, Jackson took the stage at the 26th NAACP Image Awards to make a 5-minute speech. Claiming his innocence once again, he was met with a standing ovation from the audience. During the ceremony, one of the presenters listed Jackson among other names and referred to him as Michael, innocent until proven guilty Jackson. Despite his efforts to maintain his reputation, Jackson's commercial standing and public image suffered in the aftermath of the allegations. In Dubai, an anonymous pamphlet campaign accused him of being immoral, leading the government to ban him from performing. His business ventures also took a hit. He withdrew from a deal to create a song and music video for the film Addams Family Values, returning an estimated $5 million. A planned fragrance line was also scrapped, reportedly due to concerns over Jackson's prescription drug use. Although he had initially intended to release the Addams Family Values music video as part of the project, he later repurposed it into the 1996 short film Ghosts, which featured a storyline about an eccentric entertainer who is pursued by a prejudiced local official. On November 14, 1993, Jackson faced another major setback when PepsiCo ended its 9-year sponsorship deal with him. In response, some of his fans boycotted the company. Around the same time, he had been working on the soundtrack for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but he ultimately left the project and went uncredited, reportedly due to the controversy surrounding him. Jackson continued to perform despite the public scrutiny, and in 1995, he planned a special concert event for HBO titled For One Night Only, which was set to be recorded at New York City's Beacon Theater in front of an invited audience. However, during rehearsals on December 6th, he collapsed and was taken to Beth Israel Medical Center North, where he was admitted overnight. The concerts were never rescheduled. The following year, he launched the History World Tour, which only included 2 shows in the United States, both at Aloha Stadium in Honolulu, Hawaii. His 1995 album, History Past, Present, and Future, Book 1, released in the wake of the allegations, was described by critic Stephen Thomas Erlewine as creating an atmosphere of paranoia. Many of its songs reflected Jackson's frustration with the media and the legal battles he had endured. In Scream and Tabloid Junkie, he expressed his anger over what he saw as unfair treatment by the press, while the ballad Stranger in Moscow conveyed his deep sense of isolation and despair following the scandal. One of the album's most controversial tracks, DS, appeared to take direct aim at Tom Sneddon, the district attorney who had overseen the investigation into Jackson and ordered the police strip search. The lyrics portrayed the subject as a vengeful figure, and Jackson insinuated that the character was a white supremacist bent on destroying him. Sneddon, when asked about the song, reportedly remarked that he had not personally listened to it, but had been informed that it ended with the sound of a gunshot. According to the Washington Post, the O.J. Simpson trial overshadowed Michael Jackson's scandal, with a source from the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office stating that the case took a back seat once the Simpson case dominated media attention. Years later, in 2021, a judge noted that Jackson had earned no money from his image and likeness between 2006 and 2008, highlighting the long-term impact of the allegations on his career, which persisted until his death. On December 18, 2003, another allegation hit, but this time, it was more than one. Jackson was charged with 7 counts of child abuse and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent to commit a felony against Gavin Arvizo. Jackson denied all allegations, and once again, Tom Sneddon led the prosecution. The trial, People v. Jackson, began on January 31, 2005, in Santa Maria, California. The judge allowed testimony about prior allegations, including the 1993 case, to establish whether Jackson had a pattern of committing such crimes. However, Jordan Chandler, the accuser in the 1993 case, refused to testify and reportedly left the country. Jackson's defense attorney, Thomas Mesereau, later stated that prosecutors had tried to compel Chandler to appear in court, but he refused. Mesereau also claimed he had witnesses prepared to testify that Chandler had privately admitted nothing had happened and that he had distanced himself from his parents over their role in making him accuse Jackson. June Chandler, Jordan's mother, testified that she had not spoken to her son in 11 years. During her testimony, she claimed she could not remember being countersued by Jackson, was unaware of her own attorney, and stated that she had never personally witnessed any molestation. On June 13, 2005, after months of testimony, Jackson was acquitted of all 14 charges. Jason Francia, the son of Blanca Francia, a former maid at Neverland Ranch, testified during the 2005 trial that Jackson had allegedly abused him multiple times when he was between 7 and 10 years old. According to The Guardian, Francia described an incident where Jackson tickled him before reaching into his shorts and touching him inappropriately. He further claimed that these incidents were followed by Jackson giving him money, which he interpreted as an incentive to keep quiet. However, during cross-examination, Francia admitted that in his initial 1993 interview with detectives, he had denied being molested by Jackson. He explained that he had done so out of fear of embarrassment at school. He also revealed that he had undergone counseling until he was 18 years old. Mesereau attempted to argue that both Francia and his mother had been influenced by aggressive prosecutors and the potential for financial gain through media interviews. Jury foreman Paul Rodriguez later commented that Francia's testimony, much like that of Gavin Arvizo's mother, Janet Arvizo, seemed inconsistent and unreliable, leaving too many little loopholes that made it difficult for the jury to find him credible. In 2013, years after defending Jackson at trial, dancer and choreographer Wade Robson reversed his stance and filed a lawsuit against Jackson's estate, claiming that Jackson had abused him between the ages of 7 and 14. Another man, James Safechuck, who had appeared as a child actor in a 1987 Pepsi commercial, also accused Jackson of abuse. Their allegations became the central focus of the 2019 documentary Leaving Neverland, which reignited public debate over Jackson's legacy. Do you think Macaulay Culkin was right to defend his friend till the very end? Or do you think otherwise? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating stories.